With Ruin Mei's banner coming very soon, of course, a lot of people have been excited for Ruin Mei, but let's go ahead and take the spotlight away from her, and let's go ahead and start talking about one of the 4 stars that a lot of people are excited for, because yes, ever since the early portions of the story for the REHOO, we have all fell in love with the design of Xueyi, and a lot of people are excited for her to come out, especially since she's going to be in the same realm of Dr. Ratio and how she's going to be supporting other units with being able to do directed follow-up attacks, and this is a very big thing for characters like Topaz and Numby, and I can't wait to see what we can get from her, especially with the ignoring toughness damage, all that type of stuff. Really cool portions of her kit that we're going to be seeing coming from her. But today we are going to be talking about all the traces that she will have and all the major traces, because that is a very important part in how a character is built or how the quality of life of this character will be had. We do know that Ruin Mei did end up getting changes to her kit in regards to having break effect scaling in the way her traces work, and also providing some extra buffs. So yeah, there's an absolutely crazy amount of things that we are going to be getting from Ruin Mei. And now looking at Xueyi, we also have a big change in kit and a different way we're going to be looking at her and looking at how she is supposed to be built from her traces. I'm just gonna go ahead and say this right now. She will be by far one of the hardest units to build, just because of how much she needs from every single stat. And we're going to go ahead and start talking about all the traces and then get into why she's actually going to be super hard to build. So for her first trace is going to be increased damage dealt based on the break effect up to a certain amount. And this already, as you can see, is a very big deal breaker for a lot of relic builds that people have already been grinding out. Because how are we supposed to know that break effect was going to be one of her main scalings? And this is an outright damage boost for the fact that no matter what, we'll have to make sure that we hit as far as we can with the break effect damage dealt buff, because it's going to be skyrocketing her damage like crazy. And this is actually a big setback in how she's going to be scaling, just due to the fact that we are going to be looking at break effect as her main scaling, but we can't forget about things like attack, crit damage, crit rate, break effect, also speed. There's a fat ton of stats that go into this, and just looking at this one trace alone, now that she needs a bit more to be able to actually do damage and to be able to maximize what she's going to be doing with their ignore toughness, there is a fat ton of things we got to look at when it comes to using Xueyi and how we're going to be building her. But now looking at the second trace is going to be, if the toughness bar is higher than a certain amount of max toughness, make sure you're going to be doing a bunch more damage with your ultimate, and that's pretty good. That's going to help a lot with adding a fat ton of break or a fat ton of possibilities where we're going to be like one-shotting shields and stuff like that. And especially pairing her up with Ruin Mei, this is already playing around with their first and second trace, because Ruin Mei will be giving break effect to all allies just innately through her traces, and is a really good thing for her first trace, that is the damage dealt buff with break effect. And then for the second one, you doing more damage with your ultimate, and then adding on top of it with this trace if they do have a certain amount of toughness, and then adding on top weakness break efficiency from Ruin Mei. That is a fat ton of buffs that you are getting from this synergy. So those two are going to be absolutely insane with each other. And we're not forgetting all the other things like the damage dealt buff from Ruin Mei herself, the speed buff, also having the all that type of stuff that she has. I can't name all of it because she just has too much, in all honesty. But for the fact that Xueyi is a sub DPS and also can work with Ruin Mei, there's going to be a lot of really cool things that go around with having Ruin Mei and Xueyi at the same time, just because Ruin Mei is that AoE buffer, and she is going to be helping Xueyi a lot in that sub DPS role that we didn't have already. And then the last one will be Xueyi will keep track of a set amount of stacks after her stacking meter is full. I think this is a really good quality of life type of given trace that we do have, because if we do end up maxing up your stacks and you get the full amount that you need to do your follow-up attack, the other toughness damage that you are doing with maybe an AoE unit is going to go to waste, and you do get that carried onto your next follow-up attack, which is a very strong thing to have and a really good thing to have. This allows you to do more follow-up attacks more frequently, and also you're not getting wasted stacks. So this is really cool that they're adding this. I wonder how much they're going to be giving us in terms of how much can overflow, but the fact that it gets refunded into your actual meter once you do your first follow-up attack, that is an amazing thing. I wonder if we could do some crazy setups in the future where you're basically getting a follow-up attack every attack or something with every AoE unit in the game or something like that. That'd be some absolute insanity. But after talking about all three of these traces, as you can see, there is a lot playing around with her and Ruin Mei for sure. But if we're not going to be running her with Ruin Mei, there is a lot of optimization that we do need to look at in regards to how Xueyi is going to be built. She's going to be by far one of the hardest characters to build at the optimal level, just because of all the things that she really wants as a kit. Remember, she's not a main DPS, so we won't be buffing her with like characters like Bronya. We won't be giving her things like Ting Yun energy or Ting Yun attack or Ting Yun damage dealt buff. So these are things that won't be given to her unless you're actually maining and using a main DPS Xueyi, which is not really her current role. She's kind of supposed to be in that dual DPS or sub DPS role, and having Xueyi take up all those buffs isn't going to really be worth it compared to a lot of the other units that would love those buffs a lot more. So as you can see, a lot of the units that aren't Ruin Mei aren't really going to be able to give Xueyi what she wants to be able to basically min-max one stat over the other. There are characters like Asta and Ting Yun that can help a little bit with the speed or possibly the attack or the crit rate and crit damage, but those characters are a little bit harder to use without Eidolons, so it is going to be hard to just pair her up with a character to just make her work automatically. So what we're going to be looking at in terms of stats, you are going to want to need a lot of them, and this is going to be a fat reason why, because having attack is the main priority. Having to do enough damage to be able to get your crits to actually do damage. Attack is going to be a base damage stat that you do want to have, and then break damage, of course, is something you're going to want to have as well, because this does play into her trace with giving her a damage dealt buff, which is a major thing. Speed is also something you would kind of want on your boots and possibly substats as well, because you kind of don't want to give Xueyi one turn every 3 years, because you do want to make use of her skill, you do want to make use of her ultimate. It's just really annoying that we have to go into attack, break, speed, and you also have to make sure you're getting a really nice crit rate and crit damage ratio, because we're not going to be able to do enough damage unless you want to make her a break bot. And if she is a break bot, then she just won't be doing enough damage with her follow-up attacks or her skill or her ultimate. You'll basically be waiting there for toughness damage and also the break from the quantum weakness. So there's a lot of weird things that you can work around with Xueyi if you want to make her a break bot, if you want to make her do actual DPS. But if you want the best of both, you are going to have to highly invest in Xueyi to be able to get the optimal amount of stats that you need to be able to use her to the, I guess you say, degree of where she's doing a substantial amount of work to be on a team. And then lastly, looking at Xueyi, there are a couple of things we need to look at when it comes to the light cones, because as we may know, destruction light cones aren't the best in terms of what they offer. A lot of the 5 stars, a lot of the 4 stars are very conditional and only work with that one unit. I know there are some light cones that can be kind of substituted in terms of signature light cones, like maybe Blades or Jinglius, but these are highly conditional, and a lot of the 4-star conditional ones are really insane in terms of losing the buff after a certain amount of turns. The only ones I find good so far for Xueyi will be Secret Vow, because you are going to get a damage dealt buff innately, and then if you are lower than the enemy, you do get an extra damage buff. The only problem is she doesn't have a means to lower her HP, nor is she going to stop herself from getting healed from your healer. So that is a lot of weird things in terms of keeping that passive up for Xueyi. And then if you want the absolute best in slot for her, it's probably going to be a Fall of an Aeon, just because it will give you that attack boost, it will give you that damage boost when people are broken. It kind of plays into her kit and stuff like that. These are the light cones that you would use on her. I wish they would bring out a break effect light cone that kind of converts some of it into attack while also giving you break effect. That will kind of be the best of both worlds, or basically another 5-star light cone or 4-star light cone that is going to give crit rate or crit damage to the person that you're giving the light cone to. We don't have any of these light cones that do that besides the signatures, so it'd be nice to get a free to play or maybe even a summonable one that is 4-star that does give crit rate, crit damage, because without it, it is kind of hard to get her crit rate and crit damage to a nice ratio where you're doing actually a good amount of damage. So hopefully we get something like that in the future. We all know that, of course, the relic state is going to be quantum, but looking at the main stats is a little bit too much at the current moment. When I do make my guide, we are going to be looking at what we can use on Xueyi to make her the absolute best we can. But right now, without knowing what she gives in her traces, without what we're going to be looking at in terms of the viability between relic sets like the planar ornaments like Talia, or possibly even Inner South Soto or something like that, there's a lot of different variables without testing that I can't give you a optimal build at the current moment. So we'll have to wait and see when the guide comes out, when the review comes out, how Xueyi is going to look in terms of the build. But yeah, as you may know, with all the things I've listed so far, there's just a lot of stats and a lot of things you have to keep track of when you want to build up Xueyi, and with the light cones not really helping her out, not giving her crit rate, crit damage, not giving her break effect, only giving the damage buff and the attack buff, which is nice, but not overall the best thing she would want from her traces in that standpoint. That's going to be a lot to keep track of. So other than that, that's going to be it for this video. Let me know if you are going to be building Xueyi, if you are going to be summoning so that you can get Xueyi in the comments below. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching all the way to the video. See you on the next one, and peace.